Thank you for that intro. So you'll see that I kind of changed the setting around here because I just want to have a conversation, you and I. It's not your typical keynote. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and people around me are thinking a lot about it. It's probably on your mind too. And just to hold some space for that during this wonderful day that has been super inspiring for so many people. I don't know about you, but in the last year or so, I've been feeling really overwhelmed some days. Raise your hand if in the last month you woke up one morning and you felt overwhelmed. Tell me the truth. Right? Like it's not that I've never felt overwhelmed, but I think the frequency of days where I wake up and I think about the things that need fixing is a lot more than it used to be for me. And maybe it's a product of getting older and listening more. But I think there's something about this moment where we are that requires a little bit of attention. And while there's lots of differences between us as people, we could be, conservatives or liberals, or we could be more traditionalist, we could be very unconventional. I think that there is a general common ground of this overwhelm. And I've been thinking about what brings us here. And a lot of us, I think, are scared, Like on my days where I'm thinking about it, I think people are scared that they will be forgotten. Change makes us think about that. I think we're scared that we will be left behind. We're also scared to admit that we don't know everything, right? Because to admit that equals weakness in a lot of cultural contexts, and we can't have that. And I think ultimately we're all scared that we won't matter. So all of us are like digging into whatever our beliefs are and not want to be moved, wherever you are on that spectrum. And what that's doing is it's creating these silos, right? We're not listening to each other. And some of us definitely need to talk less than others. But I'm just saying that overall we're feeling like we're under attack somehow. And I think all sides are feeling that. So I've been thinking about how do I get over this overwhelm, right? And the first answer that most of my friends gave me was, you have to believe. You have to believe and hope that things will be better. And that sounds really cool until you get to the point where you start to interrogate hope, right? Because hope takes a lot of energy. I don't know if you've ever tried to feel hopeful about something that doesn't feel super hopeful in that moment, but it takes a lot of energy. And then you start asking questions like, how long are we supposed to be hopeful for? Like, when are things actually going to get better? And how much better is that better going to be? Because a lot of people have been fighting for, equal rights for a really long time. And it's hard. It's super uphill. As a woman, I think I feel particular kinds of pressure in this moment, because so much of the stuff that was fought so hard for not very long ago is back on the chopping block. And it feels like we're sliding back. And that's hard to look at, and it's painful. So what I did for myself last year, all through summer, was I wanted to come up with a touchstone of those days where hope feels too much for me. And I don't know if you've had those days, but there are days, right? And what I landed on was purpose. I think on days when I don't have energy for optimism, I can be purposeful. So what is that purpose? I thought a lot about how it needs to be something that I can do bare minimum just by myself any day, right? I can just dial into that and activate it, which means that it can't be super reliant on other structures, and it needs to be something that I can do individually. And what I realized was, in my entire career, the one thing that's always helped me be better, feel better, know my place in the world is helping others, boosting them on my back. And I'll explain why I'm so specific about how to do that. I think when you help people, your motivations can be different, right? Sometimes, and a lot of us fall into this, there's a performance to helping. And the performance is also energy, right? What I mean by helping people climb on my back is that quiet kind of helping, you know, the behind the scenes kind of helping, where nobody needs to know you did a thing, but you did the thing because you could. And I found that when I remove my expectations of a return, of glory, of recognition from it, and I do it for purpose, because I am in a place where I can, it's been wonderful for me, for my spirit. And helping others climb higher on our backs does 3 things for me, specifically. This work acknowledges that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? We don't think about it actively, but we do. All of us can be in this room, talking about women in tech, because lots and lots and lots of women and men and other folks did a lot of work when there was no recognition, when it was not cool, when there were no summits, nobody was tweeting, hashtagging. They did that work. So you and I can sit here and be shouty about these things and say, this is what we want, So acknowledging that helps me feel really grateful. It makes me feel less alone, because on tough days, that's the hardest thing. You feel like you're uphill and alone in your concerns. The other thing that's really good about that is I can start right now, right? All of you have social capital. You may not have a lot of money sitting in your account, but you know people, I know people, and that's a currency. And you can activate that literally the moment you decide to do something about it. So for me, if I'm working with people, it takes nothing for me to recognize someone's good work, because it's good work. It takes nothing for me to commend them, not because I want to show off or I want, a trophy for it, but because they did good work. And I try and imagine the math behind that. If everybody did that for somebody, that's huge. Look at how many people are in this room, And it's the little things. It's not the big things. And doing it with the intent of purpose, of actually shifting how power works, is hugely influential. It's very infectious. It's a lot more infectious than us sharing on big platforms, if everybody's doing it consistently. And what that does for me, using my social capital, is it makes me feel really rooted. So the title of the talk is Bloom Where You're Planted. This was a saying that was used in the civil rights movement, because people were feeling overwhelmed. They didn't know where to start, and they were told, start where you are. Your families, your communities, where you work, start where you are. And I think that narrows the scope of what we have to do in a way that's actionable, where you don't feel like literally not getting out of bed because you got some news about the election. We can laugh. It's okay. It's been a year, right? It also helps me examine my social location constantly. It's an inventory of knowing how good I have it, right? And all of us can do that. We can actually make a list of how privileged we are in many ways, even though we're fighting back in other ways, right? And just knowing that makes you feel less helpless. And I think it gives you humility, which is really, really important. Because in order to influence change, your motivation really, really matters. And humility is where you recognize that you are benefiting from others' work. Therefore, you have to do some work that will not benefit you, but future generations. And it keeps me really passionate and rooted in my community, which I think is a reality check for a lot of us. especially if you work in technology, especially if you're really keen in the digital world, which is a very real world for me. I think it helps me define who my chosen family is. And that family has grown so much since I've become focused on purpose. I'm going to share something with you that Elise Boulding, who is the pioneer of this field of study of peace and conflict, shared. So work with me for a moment. Close your eyes. It's okay. You've been here all morning. You know all these people, right? Close your eyes and imagine when you were born, who were the oldest people around you? Perhaps your grandparents, perhaps somebody at the hospital who might have held you. If you do the math on that, for a lot of people, their grandparents were probably in their 60s, 70s, 80s. You could go back almost 100 years. Some of us actually saw great-grandparents, right? Now, come back to the present and think about the youngest person in your life. This could be somebody in your family, somebody you literally saw down the street, like a baby, right? Their lifespan could be another 100 years. So Elise Boulding talks about the 200-year present as a way to think about change. What she says is, each of us is living in a 200-year present. That's the pace of change. You have been touched by somebody who was possibly alive 100 years ago, and you are touching a life that will be around 100 years from now. That's huge. That's like being a tree, and it's really good because on my days of overwhelm, I think the thing that gets to me is things aren't changing fast enough. There's so much that's breaking. What is one person like me going to do that will matter? And I think we have to remember that change happens at this pace. So if we think about a 200-year span, two things. Terrible things actually don't last as long as we think they do because you're in a 200-year present. And good things do take root. They might be slower, but they do take root. So each of us has it in us to fight back because we have to. Not because you will get a medal or a trophy or recognition or even a response from somebody. It's because we have to. Because somebody else did for us. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is something that a poet named Jack Gilbert has in one of his poems. And it's called Stubborn Gladness. And I love that because what he's saying is, in the face of so much stress, in the furnace of this world, you have to choose the light. You have to choose it because we can't do without it. So remember your humanity in these moments. And stubborn gladness is you choosing to be good and rooted in this moment despite so many signals that you shouldn't be. You belong here, all of you. And you belong here because a lot of people made sure that you got here and you were safe and you were good and provided for, and you need to do that going forward. So I'm hoping that we leave here determined to be stubborn in the face of people telling us or things telling us that we don't belong, and that we choose purpose, that we choose kindness, that we choose humility, and that we choose to change ourselves to be better versions of who we are because we know we need it. And I hope that you choose joy. Today's the first time of this event happening. I hope that you gather everywhere you go. Bloom where you're planted. I think if everybody did something, the world can change very, very quickly. Thank you.